Tell me about where the professional Jew goes when they need help.
At the present moment of time, there is nowhere for the Jewish professional to go to get help. For example, if a rabbi, a teacher, or a social worker has problems, family problems, congregational problems, and work problems, who is going to confront them? The congregation, rabbi can get fired, but that doesn't solve his problem or her problem. What I envisage is the fact that when the professional has some problems, it would be very good if there was a retreat place for them to go to unwind, for their families to unwind, a group to get to unwind, to get some help, some professional help. And that was the proposal I wrote, and it was endorsed by Rabbi Dr. Abraham Twersky, the eminent psychiatrist and addiction specialist. So, and what I would like to do with this tape recorder, this recording, would be to send it on my website or to the hierarchy of the groups, the ultra-Orthodox, the modern Orthodox, the conservative reform, and whatever movement. They could all benefit from this in their own particular way. And what I'd like to do is make a disc of this and send it out to them for their viewing. And I hope and pray that they would endorse what I'm getting at. It doesn't mean that they would have to compromise anything in their religion, or in their beliefs, or in their observances. It could be arranged for each particular group to give an idea of what's needed for them. The facility or the group would be according to the kashrut and according to religious observances of the most orthodox that could be found. And it could be done separately for each group. And I think it would help all groups this way. And the ultra-Orthodox, which I have very good connections, many of their leading rabbis know about this and say yes, but I need them to push it through some of their assemblies, some of their group meetings, that it's being endorsed by them. And once it's been endorsed by the ultra-Orthodox, I think it's on the road. Because there are ultra-Orthodox social workers, there are Orthodox therapists, the ultra-Orthodox have all their experts. They need to be channeled. And they need to feel secure in their helping their people. How does that sound?
It sounds very needed. So, what does it look like for an organization to support your initiative?
The first thing I would require is an endorsement by the leading lights of that organization, stating that they see there's a need, but it needs to be put in writing or in a statement, so it can be publicized. And the next thing is, once that's gone through, I'm sure that there are philanthropists out there who would be willing to endorse it.
So, what does the program look like in practice? you've described the general concept of rabbis and therapists and social workers and other Jewish professionals whose normal life is to support members of their community. They need an outlet. They need somewhere to go, and right now they don't have that. They don't have that opportunity. So it sounds like an amazing concept. How does it play out in reality? What if a rabbi or another Jewish professional finds themselves in need? Either they've discovered it on their own or come to the realization, or someone's intervened, family member, the president of the board, whoever. What happens next?
Well, a phone call could be made. A phone call should be made to a hotline, which will be created, or to an organization like Jewish Family and Children's Service, or something similar to that, where strictest confidentiality is the word. And from there, recommendations who to contact will be given.
So you envision creating a network of Jewish professionals who serve as the go-to people for other Jewish professionals.
Yeah.
So if I were in need of services, I would call this hotline. I would probably be talking to a counselor, I imagine, and based on my confidential conversation with that person, I would be directed to the best resource. It could be locally, it could be someone nationally, depending on the comfort level
100%.
of myself and what I need.
Yeah.
Okay. So you also mentioned that each of the movements could have their own support system within this larger organization. How does that come to be? What if the Jewish professional is calling a toll-free number and getting support from like a licensed therapist or psychologist? Where's the need to go further? Or is it that there are separate phone banks or phone numbers for those people to call?
Yes.
Okay, so the ultra-Orthodox would have a number that they would call, and so the people receiving the call would know who they're working with. Is there anything beyond a phone, a hotline? If so, what is that?
So far, of course, there's not. But what I envisage is, once the initial contact is made, the hotline has been made, now the referral. This is where some of the difficulties could arise, but it could be taken care of, just like in AA. What I'm saying is that once the therapist has diagnosed a certain thing, there should be a place where the professional could go and let their hair down.
And is that specific professionals in their community, or is that a retreat?
A retreat center.
Okay. And that also is set up for each movement.
That would be ideal.
Okay.
But I think once that's gone through, I think some togetherness could take place. Well, after all, we have this JAX organization that I have found, and where for a weekend Jews of all denominations come together. There are 3 different services. You have the ultra-Orthodox service, like Beis Yisrael. Then you have the egalitarian service. and people go their separate ways as far as davening is concerned. As far as kashrut and the religious observance is concerned, those are the highest standards.
So for someone who's not familiar with JAX, could you take a couple of minutes and explain that?
JAX is an organization that I have predicted in 1977-78. When I gave a keynote address, it's published in a book called Judaism, Addiction in the Jewish Community. And it could be found. And where I predicted that we have retreats every 6 months in the mountains or anywhere where Jews of all denominations could come and have meetings, AA meetings, NA meetings, all these meetings under one roof. And this has been going on since 1978.
So it sounds like
place. It's that spiritual days and so on and so forth.
So the resource, the retreat for Jewish professionals, will be built on a very similar model.
Yes. But I think these days it has to be done a little more separate than JAX's, because people are getting more embedded in their movements, and that can all be worked out. Where there's a will, there's a way. That's my theory.
So it would be similar in that you would have retreats at some sort of frequency. But
eventually, what I'd like to see is a ongoing retreat center where people can go and really unwind and get therapy and so on and so forth.
And all in an environment that it's completely safe for the people.
That's the main thing.
In that it's also anonymous.
100%.
That they don't have to worry about
anonymity and so on and so forth. Otherwise they won't go. Otherwise it's futile.
Because again, coming back to today, there is no place for them to go to.
No place for them to go. That's why they get them. In fact, I'm sorry to compare this. It's like the Catholic Church. They send them to some monastery or somewhere and so forth. Okay? Or they move them around from one parish to another.
But there's also a significant difference in that there's no centralized corporate structure like the Catholic Church has that can have authority to move someone or to send them to a retreat.
There is, really. In some ways there is. If this concept takes on, then each of the movements has their hierarchy. The Rabbinical Assembly, Rabbinical Council of America, the Agudah, they all have this hierarchy, but they would have to take some responsibility for their colleagues. If a colleague burns out on the job, and he gets into trouble in not only with sexual things, but financial things. And some of them got to prison. These are ongoing things. I'm not making them up. It needs to be faced.
So what you're envisioning is a means for each of the movements to help, for lack of a better term, police their own
100%.
By supporting those in greatest need.
100%.
They strengthen their entire movement.
That's right.
How do you envision pulling together the group of people who will form the support mechanism for these Jewish professionals?
I'll tell you exactly. They had a conference, a mental health conference in October, November, and I spoke on this subject there. There was great interest. For non-Jewish ministers were there too. And they all want to, well, Rabbi, when are you starting having a weekly meeting for us? So it's not in that case, it's not an eccentric English rabbi, but it's needed from all faiths. Once there's a spark of interest, it could take off. That's why I want this video that we're making now. I would send this to every organizational head there is. I don't care who it is. It has to be out there.
So on a side note, do you envision this being something that is in its initial stages for the Jewish movements only, but could expand for clergy?
100%. Other movements could copy it.
So the first step that I'm hearing is getting leaders of the various movements to endorse it.
Yes.
To agree in principle that this is something that needs to be done.
They don't even have to come together. Or, let's say I'm going for the Agudah, the Agudah. They have Agudah conventions. They have gathering by their leaders. They can discuss it at one of those. They could bring it to that forefront. They know it's a problem, but it needs one or two leaders to say, "Okay, boys, we're going to put this on the agenda. We're going to see how we can help this crazy man from Minnesota."
And then what's next?
But once that's endorsed, then I go to them and I say, "Okay, gentlemen, thank you very much. Now I need some financial way to raise this with your endorsement." They send me every day. I get letters. This Shmer Beryl is sick. This one is this. This one is having 17 children and can't keep his pants tied up. And this one, da 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 da. Now I want them to show me how I can raise money with their endorsement to start this thing going.
Because there are members of the various communities who
are close to these Rebbes, and what the Rebbe says, they will follow.
And they've been blessed with good lives, success, that they would write the checks.
They might have a relative in the family who's a teacher or something like this, who's had a problem. All you need is one family member to have. My wife is in London. Her cousin died. Somebody came to her talking that their daughter, these are prominent people, are good people. Their daughter's gone off the derech, gone off the way, and she's been thrown out of every treatment centre that there is. The family are disgusted with themselves. This is it's a concept that I'm sure, and I'm totally convinced will take off. Because Dr. Tversky says that you got that booklet I gave you. It's in there, an endorsement letter from him. I'm not talking out of my yarmulke. I'm talking out of that professional people are saying it's a need. Go for it.
So there's an acknowledgement.
It's an acknowledgement. And he's a Hasidic Rebbe, Dr. Tversky.
So there's an acknowledgement amongst the professionals that they need something. It hasn't happened yet.
Because nobody's Nobody has had yet, and I say this with all humility, the courage to knock on the doors and keep my big feet in there. I'm not letting this stop.
Because it's important for everyone.
For the Jewish community. And let the non-Jewish community copy it. Good, I help them also. I have no problem. I'm not selfish.
So you have this plan.
Yeah, it's in writing. You got it there.
You have the vision. You have this plan. There is a need.
Oh yes. It's acknowledged there's a need.
And from my understanding of the 12 steps, that's the first.
You admit your powerlessness, yes.
And so we need to help people move to the second step.
That's
and
right.
Continue to work the 12 steps in helping the Jewish community overall by helping the individuals whose responsibility it is to help the Jewish community. Do you have individual stories, or more importantly, do you have rabbis and other professionals who would be willing to come out and admit that either they or they know of a need?
I'm just sitting looking at one.
In addition to you.
As long as in a confidential way. Yeah.
That they could write a letter, a story, a testimonial of some sort that they...
What we could do, that's a good question. Once this video is out, we could encourage people. We could put an article in the Jewish newspapers. We're asking people to come forward with strictest confidentiality and anonymity to tell their story. And I'm sure you'll get lots of answers. For all walks of life. Even if they had a child who was a drug addict. They didn't know what to do, because if they go around in the congregation would go crazy.
Do you have Jewish professionals that you could go to seed the organization with the talent? Do you have the people you know that you would go to start the organization? Not to fund it, but the actual people to help make it happen.
Three different questions.
You've described an organization that would provide a hotline that the Jewish professional could call. So you'll need individuals who will be there to answer that call, or
a volunteer thing, yeah.
And then there'll need to be people to help run the organization, and
you can get that through the professionals in each individual group.
So you're confident you know who to go to pull together an organization that would.
Yeah.
Individuals who'd be willing to stand up and say, this is a problem, I'm willing to commit myself to it.
No problem.
Either on a volunteer or
that's the least
staff
of my
basis.
problems.
Okay. haven't we discussed about this prayer that needs to be discussed?
How to get it out there. We've discussed that even. What's the next step?
So anyone who's watching this video, because we know
Cool.
what if
They can call me.
okay.
And we will work on the referrals basis plan.